Hello viewers, welcome to Top Notch Online TV. With you today is none other than Teacher Fidelis from Alliance High School. I'm a teacher of English, an author and an editor. With me today, I have my favorite teachers with me. To start with, we have Teacher Rispa. She's from Kikuyu, PCA Kikuyu High School. She's a teacher of English, an examiner and an author. Next, we have Teacher Emis from Alliance Girls High School. She's a teacher of English, an author and an examiner. So students at home, remember, we're still discussing themes in the book, Fathers of Nations. In the last two episodes, we discussed themes, and today we continue to discuss, because we have so many themes in this book. To start with, we have hypocrisy. Teacher Rispa, can you take us through?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for joining us, viewers. When I'm looking at hypocrisy, I'll start with the definition of what exactly is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is whereby someone is pretending to have some standards that they actually do not have. Or maybe from another definition, if you could pick your dictionary, there are about 4 different definitions of what hypocrisy is. They're also talking about calling out someone for doing something, exactly the same thing that you are doing. But now, to just narrow it down for the benefit of our students, we look at hypocrisy as simply pretense. On to my first point about hypocrisy, I'll talk about Kimani Karanja's wife, who is Asiya. Asiya has settled and decided that she is going to leave the husband, Professor Kimani. But then when she's being asked, is money what is fueling your decision to leave? She actually denies it. And if you could allow me maybe to go into the book and look at the illustration on what, using Asiya's words, what did she say? She said, for you, I'm reading from page 33. For you, I've done without money for over 30 years. Repeat, 30 years. And now you have the girl to say money is the reason I want to live. Therefore, from page 33, we can conclude that Asiya is denying that it is money that is fueling her decision to live. But if you could go back to page 29, maybe I'll just give you the reference to page 29. You read at your own time. In page 29, she was encouraging the husband, why don't you leave teaching and pursue active politics? Can't you look at Wolamu? Wolamu, by then, he was an MP and he was owning 4 cars. The fact that she knows Wolamu is an MP owning 4 cars, it speaks to her materialism, that she is after the money. But pretending that she's not after the money when she is ready to be enticed by Wolamu is hypocrisy. Secondly, when I look at hypocrisy, I'll be talking about Dr. Afolabi. Dr. Afolabi has been speaking to the 4 Path Alpha travelers. They know him as the guide, He knows their identity, but they, on the other hand, do not know who Dr. Afolabi is. Then Dr. Afolabi creates a rapport with Fiona Mackenzie, and Fiona Mackenzie thinks, this man being my friend, let me let him into a secret that we have the silent listener. As Fiona is telling him about the silent listener, we are seeing that Dr. Afolabi is pretending like he does not have the interest in whatever she's saying. In fact, he appears like he is really sleepy and he's ready to turn in for the night. But then, at the back of his mind, you're seeing that he is actually worried and he's wondering, have they uncovered that the guide that I've not yet introduced myself to them. When I'm looking at another point on hypocrisy, let me talk about Tahir. Tahir had pursued a woman. A woman had rebuffed his advances. And Tahir felt that the woman needed to be punished. But now when Tahir is punishing the woman, when he is seeking vengeance against this woman, he's also being hypocritical. He doesn't say, I'm really offended that you've refused my advances, you've rebuffed my advances. He actually waits for the woman. As the woman has uncovered her head, he goes ahead and slaps her, and then he uses culture as his defense. That why are you showing your hair in public? Why are you covering your head in public? That is actually hypocrisy. I still have other points on hypocrisy. I'm looking at the president of Zimbabwe. President of Zimbabwe, popularly being called the bomber. The bomber Instead of being outright that he is punishing his enemies, he's pretending that these people are planning to stage a coup. The man from the Ndebele tribe, the one that was in charge of the side of Melusi, when he's exerting his revenge, he decides to plant some evidence, namely a contingent of firearms, so that when the person is being arrested, he's being arrested on trumped out charges that he was planning to stage a coup against the government. But what you know, this man is simply settling scores with people who are not from his ethnicity. Then to my last point on hypocrisy, I'll be talking about the chairman during that summit. I'll be talking about Meniko Menkiti. Meniko Menkiti in relation to Jemba Jemba. When he's addressing Jemba Jemba, he says, Your Majesty, we have noted your concern, and he's addressing this guy with some kind of respect. From someone who is an onlooker. An onlooker will see that Menkiti has some kind of respect towards Jemba Jemba. He's even recognizing him as Your Majesty. But then in a low tone, Menkiti is contemptuous towards Jemba Jemba. His words are that, towards Jemba Jemba, in his description, he says, a callow youth with a mother's milk still on his breath. That can be found on page 164. But then, that one he doesn't say aloud. And whatever he says aloud, he displays kindness towards Jemba Jemba. But his inner feeling is that this guy is too young. He shouldn't even be speaking where his elders are speaking. And then maybe those are the points I could get on. Those are the 5 points I could get on hypocrisy. But then there's another point. It has not been developed up to the end, but maybe I'd like my colleagues to listen to it, and also you at home to listen to it and think about it. I'll be looking at Fiona Mackenzie. Fiona Mackenzie, she was called by the boss to return to the office because the boss had something to share with her. Out of earshot, she's able to say, silly boss wants me back in the office. But then when she is interacting with this boss, the boss is giving her new instructions. You're no longer going to work for the Gambia News. We are lending you to VOA for 2 years. We do not see her resisting. We do not see the kind of disdain towards the boss. She looks like she's so obedient. She takes the instructions. She goes ahead and works under VOA. That is another point on hypocrisy, though not well developed. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Teacher Rispa. Of course, when you're looking at hypocrisy, we're looking at pretense. Yeah, you just want to cover something. And using our examples that the teacher has given, we have looked at the various characters in the book. And think about the question the teacher has posed. Looking at Fiona Mackenzie, what can you say about her in regards to hypocrisy? The next theme we shall be looking at is vengeance, and this will be covered by Teacher Emis. Please take us through.
Thank you, Teacher Fidelis. Hello, viewers, and welcome to our channel. So I'm going to look at vengeance. And vengeance, simply put, is retaliation. Retaliation against a wrong done to someone or against an injustice. So my first point, I'm going to look at Professor Kimani. Professor Kimani revenges or avenges against Mr. Nyumbon Walomu. So Kimani lost everything. And what pains him most is his wife abandoning him 6 months after losing his daughter, Tony. So just one day, she breaks the news to him and tells him that she's going to leave and she's going to get married to Nyumbon Walomu. Note that Nyumbon Walomu was a former junior colleague of Professor Karanja. So she's leaving her husband, Karanja, for a junior colleague who apparently left teaching and joined politics and is now influential or wealthy. So it hurts or it pains Professor Karanja so much that he decides to avenge. So what he does is he goes to Mr. Nyumbon Walomu's office and confronts him and tells him that he has stolen his wife, and what good would she be to him now that she's 60 years old. And again, Walomu already has 3 young wives who have already given him children. So he's hurt by that betrayal from his wife and also betrayal from his junior colleague, because he should have respected Karanja in a way, someone who was his senior at some point, and not go ask his wife to marry him while she was still married to Karanja. So I should have noted or pointed out that if someone decides to avenge something, revenge comes with consequences, and they can be positive consequences or they can be negative consequences. So in this case, Kimani's way of seeking revenge brings about negative consequences to him, because when he goes to Mr. Walomu's office and confronts him, insults him by calling him a greedy, fat baboon, insults him, and to the extent out of his anger also engages in a physical fight, which of course he loses. So what are the consequences of his revenge? First of all, he loses his freedom, because when he engages in that physical fight, he is arrested and he stays in jail for 6 months. So he loses his freedom for 6 months. Number two, he is also mocked by Newborn. He keeps on telling him that I am taking Asiam because all this gold. It's like a way of telling Karanja that I am doing this because I can do so, because nothing will happen to me if I decided to take your wife. So there is that pain that comes with the mockery. Then the third one, his career suffers. When he leaves jail, then the university says that he is an embarrassment. So they demote him from now the professor position that he had, and they took him to the starting rank when he joined university. Just he's actually demoted to the position of just a lecturer. A lecturer, the way he joined the University of Nairobi. That is the first point. Now the second point is Engineer Self Tahil. Engineer Self Tahil sees a junior colleague, way junior than he was. A lady who was very beautiful, Miss Mahmood, and he falls in love with Miss Mahmood, and one day just decides to ask her out to go and have a bowl of soup, tomato soup, to go out. And Miss Mahmood just been like, most of the women decides that she's going to play a little bit hard to get. So she says a no, but it wasn't a sour no. It wasn't a no that means no. It was actually a no that was supposed to develop into a yes, if I can put it like that. But that hurts Tahil so much. His ego is hurt that a junior colleague can actually say no to him. He feels embarrassed. He feels that he has been rejected in a very callous way. So he decides to take revenge. What does he do? He waits until one day Miss Mahmood goes to change into her work clothes. She asks to take a veil out so that she can put on her work gear. So Mr. or Engineer Saif Tahil goes and slaps her and tells her that she's actually disregarding the law on the culture, because a woman is not, it's a heritage week. A woman is not supposed to take off a veil. So he slaps her and accidentally, or let's just say it was just
she was just trying to defend herself.
Yeah, to defend herself. She slits his eye using a letter opener. So he goes to hospital, stays for like 2 months. And immediately leaves the hospital. He now places charges against her. So in court, now they use this, they call it the Arabic law. It's like Arabic law, whereby they do that since you slit his eye and he lost an eye, you as well, you're going to lose an eye. An eye for an eye, kind of a law. So Miss Mahmood also loses a left eye through surgery, because the court ruled that she should also lose her eye. So I want you to see there are like two forms of betrayal. No, not betrayal, but revenge here. So Tahil revenges because Miss Mahmood said no to him by slapping her. Now, when he slaps her, Miss Mahmood also revenges by using the letter opener to slit his eye. Now, when his eye is slit, what does it do? He doesn't sit down and say that I started this chain of events. He goes to court and as a the court ruled to have an eye as well removed.
Yeah.
So it's like there are two ways. Each one is trying to defend their actions and revenge. The next person that we can look at is Comrade Gobile Melusi. So when Gobile Melusi decides to avenge against his wife's murder, because that was cold-blooded murder. So when the president of Zimbabwe, he commits so many atrocities against the Zimbabwe people, and the most painful one was against Melusi, who was actually supposed to be his friend, someone close to, because he was his supporter throughout. He assisted him to get into position as well as to fight Smith, the white person. So once he got into power, he now becomes tribal, and according to him, the Ndebele tribe is his enemy, and Melusi belongs to the Ndebele tribe. So with those tribal clashes, I'm not going to go so much into the details because we discussed it in our previous episodes. So during those tribes, the president himself orders for the killing of the Ndebele people, and one of the people who was killed was Ziliza, Gobile Melusi's wife, and she was killed, and in a very gruesome manner that it broke Melusi's heart. So when he joins Agada, he plans to avenge his wife's death. On page 114, page 144, Melusi swears to his wife's picture. He's looking at his wife's picture, and he swears to his picture that he is going to execute revenge against what was done to her by the president. So during the summit, when he's given a chance to speak by Afolabi, it's Afolabi. Dr. Afolabi gives each one of them a chance to speak. Melusi does not speak. He just walks towards the president of Zimbabwe, and he had plans to go and attack him and avenge his wife's death. But of course, that does not happen because there was state security at the summit. So the security personnel just seize him and they whisk him away. So the last point I have is just to conclude, like all those points, all the path travelers are seeking revenge in one way or the other against the atrocities that were committed towards them or to them by their own governments. All the four of them join Agada with the intention of seeking revenge. So that was like the concluding paragraph or point.
Thank you so much, teacher Emis. Of course, looking at revenge, we're looking at almost the four main characters, I think, because when you go back to the main characters that we have discussed, and I hope that you have watched the episode where we discussed the characters in the book, you find that they have issues that they have gone through in the government from their countries. And when we see Tad Longway asking them to join AGDA, they do it so easily. And willingly. And of course, looking at Melusi, this is one character who had one thing to do at the summit. He just wanted to attack the president, to just avenge the death of Ziliza. And students, remember that we're looking at Ziliza as the wife to Comrade Melusi. So the next thing we shall be looking at is despair. We're looking at disillusionment. We see the main characters in the book. The moment Tad Longway asked them to join AGDA, they're so willing to join, and because of the issues that they have gone through. So, Teacher Rispa, what can you say about these things?
Okay. If I could patch it up with what my two colleagues have said, they're talking about these four-path alpha travelers. What they have in common, they're being fueled by feelings of revenge. Apart from feelings of revenge, I'm also seeing that they have another thing in common. They are all suffering from disillusionment. But what is disillusionment in the first instance? Disillusionment is a feeling of disappointment when you realize something is not what you expected. Now with disillusionment, first of all, there's the expectation that when it is not met, you end up being disillusioned. My first point, I'll talk about Asia. Asia had been married to Karanja Kimani for quite some time. And there was the positive part of being married to Kimani Karanja, where she says that she had seen him as a young man going places. But now when she looks at his car has become a metaphor of his life. Just like his car that is not going anywhere, the car is in the parking lot because it is experiencing some mechanical problems. It is not going anywhere. And this car that is not going anywhere is a metaphor of Karanja's life, that he as well is going nowhere. Now, when she looks at the life of this man, despite them having stayed together for quite some time, despite them being old, this woman, out of being disillusioned, she decides, I'll walk out of this marriage despite my old age. Another instance of the disillusionment, we are looking at Kimani Karanja. Another instance, you're looking at Kimani Karanja. Kimani Karanja is disillusioned from a number of scenarios that play in his life. Kimani Karanja, first of all, is disillusioned by the fact that a long time ago, when we were looking at lecturers and members of parliament, lecturers used to earn more than the members of parliament. But now that members of parliament are the same lawmakers, they've put in place some laws that favor them, they keep adding themselves money, and their lives are changing. But about the lecturer, about the teachers, their lives are not changing. And then we're also looking at the teachers are earning peanuts compared to MPs, and he attributes this to a coup undertaken by the members of parliament, and this can be found on page 23. His words, if I could start from Kiswahili, he talks about misitu mpya nyani wale wale. Different forests, but the same monkeys. Yeah. By translation, if you could relate it to the book, he's talking about his disillusionment that he doesn't foresee a change. Even if you're changing these leaders, we are talking about the same forests. We are talking about different forests, but then we are talking about the same monkeys. The fact that he's not seeing change in the near future can capture his disappointment in the state of politics in Kenya, therefore an instance of disillusionment. We are still on Professor Karanja. Professor Karanja had a fight with Newborn Walamu, and after the fight with Walomu, he serves a 6-month jail term, and then later on, we are seeing that after his release, he considered his career doomed. And if we relate to the life of Professor Karanja, he had always verbalized the fact that once a teacher, always a teacher. He was hoping to die as a teacher. But now we are looking at him after being released from jail. On page 45, he willingly joins Path Alpha. It is being driven by his disillusionment. His career has been doomed. He's no longer looking at it as something that was good to him. Yeah. He's now getting disappointed with this career now. How far is it taking me? I better quit on this career. Willingly joins Path Alpha. We also see that Melusi experiences disillusionment, looking at his prior relationship with the bomber, the president of Zimbabwe. Melusi had been a comrade. When we're looking at him and he's being called Comrade Melusi, it is because he had fought alongside the president of Zimbabwe to chase out the white man, Smith. And then, as it is just natural, the person you have helped, you expect that when they ascend to power, they'll be repaying the favor. Yeah. But then when the man got into power, the man decided that he will not even give him a ministerial position. We see that his expectations were met with disappointment. His disappointment with the state of affairs in Zimbabwe even make him to run for a political office where he runs in the opposition to run against the president of Zimbabwe. We are still on disillusionment, and I've not yet touched on all the characters in Fathers of Nations, because I still have. We are looking at Longway. Longway, the one who was recruiting people to join Path Alpha. His idea was also being fueled by feelings of disillusionment. He looks at Africa and he says, Longway makes his mission clear that it was driven by the state of things in Africa that was likely not to change if there's no will to change it. This man looking at Africa, he feels that Africa is not going places. You remember the feelings of, at independence time, everyone was looking at Africa and they're feeling, we are there, we are going to achieve a lot. But then Africa is not going anywhere unless people get the will to change Africa. That is why he's now, together with Agda, trying to recruit people, and together they travel the Path Alpha to pursue change. We're also looking at Tahir. In fact, Tahir is an is a good example of disillusionment. Tahir, we can look at his prior. When Tahir was a young man, he expressed a lot of admiration for the president of Libya. He looks at president of Libya, and even when people are criticizing that particular president, Tahir says, this man has the best interest for Libya. He even goes ahead and he describes the president of Libya as someone with guts of steel. By the time you describe someone like that, you are looking at a great admiration for that person. Tahir goes ahead. He goes to France to advance his education to study about weapons. He had the feeling that after he goes into studying about weapons, his knowledge will come in handy to helping Libya. But then later, as he returns, the man is employed by the Ministry of Defense for Libya to develop nuclear weapons. Suddenly, out of fear, we remember the president calls off this mission.
Yeah.
And Tahir is met with a lot of disappointment. And the words of Tahir are that their president calling off this program of Feast of Allah can be compared to sacrilege. The definition of sacrilege is an offense against what you consider sacred. He sees it and, hey, you've even gone beyond it. You're even offending what is considered sacred. Therefore, we are seeing that Tahir is also driven by feelings of disillusionment. Pamela, the wife of Afolabi, is also disillusioned.
Yeah.
If you can even start from a normal point of view, your husband, you're always expecting he will take your side. The woman is very offended when she finds out that the clan had brought him a woman. And she even goes ahead, and now as the woman of the house, she's asking the husband, tell your relatives and this woman, they need to leave. But then the husband says, I cannot throw them out in the dark. They are, after all, my relatives. Now the woman decides, I will be the one to walk out, and she drags her suitcase outside in the night. The husband does not even follow her. Later on, what do we see? The wife files for a divorce. The wife does not see the importance of this relationship anymore. The wife was disillusioned by the act of the husband. How can he take the side of the family instead of taking my side? And finally, just by way of mentioning, Gambia hosting the summit had come with expectations that they were making a name for Zambia. But then you're being told the results of the summit, among some critics, they considered the results of the summit a failure. Therefore, something they had hoped for to make a name for themselves, ending up with them describing it as a failure, is a very good example of disillusionment. That is it, I could say, about disillusionment.
Thank you so much, Teacher Rispa. And of course, students at home, I think with all the examples that the teacher has given, then you can comfortably discuss despair or disillusionment. Now, with that, I think we can go to the next theme, and this is the theme of suffering. And teachers, I think as we discuss these themes, in a way, we're just looking at the episodes in the book and sometimes the characters in the book, because I'm looking at something like hypocrisy, the expectations. You know, when you expect someone to do something but they're having that pretense, you have expectations, and when the expectations are not met, then we have the despair that we're seeing. Looking at Pamela, and thank you, Teacher Rispa, for sharing that. We expect that Dr. Afolabi would have covered her, but he chose to support his family, his tribe, and she decides to ask for a divorce. And so lastly, we shall be looking at the theme of suffering. Teacher Emis.
Thank you once again. So suffering is a state of pain or distress, and suffering can be physical pain, emotional or psychological pain. I'll take the character approach. And mostly, the characters I'm going to discuss are the four major characters, the Path Alpha Travelers. So I'll start with Professor Karanja Kimani. Professor Karanja Kimani suffers a lot. Is both physical and psychological pain. Physical, especially when he engages in some sort of physical fight with Olomu after he confronts him during in his office when he steals his wife. We are told that he throws his fist, but he misses, and then he he stumbles over
Yeah,
and then he falls. Psychological pain or emotional pain is especially when he loses his family. When he loses his only daughter, Tony, of course, it affects him so much because that was the only child that he had. And we say that there is no pain as the pain of a parent who loses a child. The other one is when he loses his wife, Asia, to his former junior colleague, Mr. Newborn Walomo. That also hurts him so much. That is why he decides to go and confront Mr. Newborn Walomo. So his demotion also in the remember he had worked so hard to get to where he was. So because of the changes that he came up with when he joined the university and all that, so his career meant everything to him. That's why he kept on saying that he was born a teacher. So his demotion also hurt him so much. That is why you are taught that when he was released from prison, he looked so dejected, he looked so weary, and he looked like someone who has lost hope. Just from that point, despair. He's someone who had despaired in life because he had lost everything. On page 38, when Longway visits Karanja, now yes, we are told that Karanja is described as being weary from lack of sleep, and which is a recurring problem now. So it's someone who is suffering from the events that has been happening in his life. The second one is character is Comrade Melusingobile. This one suffers a lot, especially because of the death of his wife. The death of his wife comes as a result of betrayal from someone that he had considered close to him and a friend, someone that was actually his comrade. They fought together. They fought the white people together, and so they brought independence to Zimbabwe together. So that's someone that he had considered close. And this is a person now that betrays him and goes against his tribe and to the extent of killing his wife as a Lisa. Not even to mention how it's like Melus lost everything as a result of these tribal clashes organized by the president. So he lost his entire house, everything that he owned, his business. He ended up living in the slums. At the end of it all, the president also organized a group that would demolish slums. So it's like he was left homeless and someone who could barely afford basic needs. You can see, for example, in the case where he meets Longway, and he eats like someone who was not seen food for quite a long time. Yes. So that's another case of suffering. The other one is Engineer Tahil Sehif. So this one suffers physically, especially when his eye is slit by Miss Mahmood. He loses his eye, and he feels the effects. He calls it, the losing of the eye, he calls it an accident, and now the effects is what he lives with up to date. He says that he feels empty. There was so much emptiness deep inside him as a result of that. Even after the surgery, and now he had this artificial eye, he still felt there's some sort of emptiness. I also feel like the emptiness is as a result of the action that he took after the eyes was slit. He felt groomed. It's like the revenge did not even do any justice to his pain. It's actually added to his pain. So he actually, when Longway approached him, by then he had already left is it Libya or the capital? He had left the capital because he wanted to stay in solitude so that he can try to like internalize that pain or that emptiness that he was feeling. So it's someone who was suffering a lot. Page 124, just to prove my point or to emphasize on it, he says that he hated his artificial eye so much, and because it brought an air of sorrow that always lingered on like an unwanted guest who might live all, might not live. That is page 124. That's how much the artificial eye reminded him of the emptiness in his life. The other one is Pastor Chiamaka Chineke. He suffers psychologically because after he was arrested, when he spoke against how the government ruled Nigeria, he was arrested, and after being released, he's banned from ever preaching. And actually it's something that he had grown to like and he enjoyed doing. So that ban from ever preaching in Nigeria hurt him so much. And that is why he also willingly joins Hagda.
Yeah.
There are other characters as well who suffers that. We can see, for example, someone like Pamela, just like you've put it. It's someone who wanted that support from her husband. But what she gets is totally the opposite of what she needed or what she expected. So in a way, her going back to her country at night and sitting down decided to file for divorce, it shows that deep down she was hurting from her husband's actions or lack of action, if you can put it like that. So that's all. Asia as well.
The loss of the daughter.
Also,
loss of Tony.
The loss of Tony also. As a mother, she suffers a lot.
That's okay. Maybe a question the students might be having at home. When we look at the summit taking place in Gambia, and we look at the slums that are being demolished, what can you say about that, teacher?
Okay, when I'm looking at the slums being demolished, I'm seeing people suffer because this marked their livelihood, this marked their settlements. They must have suffered.
They did.
Even when their water was taken, channeled to the fountain, the people are suffering.
Actually, that's another point. They do suffer a lot
So
in the hands of the government. So, and we can use the Gambians as well as the Zimbabwe citizens. Yes,
that's okay. So, of course, away from the main characters, and we're looking at Professor Kimani, Pastor Chiamaka, and others. We can use these characters to talk about the suffering. And of course, when you read the Fathers of Nations, the very first chapters we're introduced to the four characters, and we get to know them. So again, because students at home, remember, you'll be the very first testing will be on the excerpt. So if you're looking at say the theme of suffering, of course you have to go back to the excerpt provided for you, and you have to discuss. You have to give instances where we see the characters suffering. And of course, remember in our previous episode, we said that sometimes if the examiner permits you to use the rest of the book to discuss a certain point, then you can actually do that. Remember that we have so many themes, of course, discussing this book using the excerpts, we have major themes and minor themes. And using this episode and the two previous episodes, we have looked at more than eight themes. But remember, we still have the theme of change, the theme of marriage, moral decadence, among others. So even as you go back to school, even as you talk to your teachers of English, then you can also have a discussion on other minor themes. So maybe as we conclude, teacher Emmys, as the students now maybe talk about the themes in the book, what is the main factor that they should consider, especially when they answer questions in the excerpt pertaining themes?
Okay, thank you. So in another section where we looked at how to tackle exact questions, we clearly see that if you're talking about themes, you use either a noun or a noun phrase to present your theme. Again, if you're giving the illustration, or themes are always illustrated in an exact question. So when giving an illustration, it is good to explain using your own words. If you have to lift a statement, let it be to back up your explanation. So don't just go lift a statement and put that as illustration. Go ahead, and if you're talking about betrayal, talk about how was this person betrayed, like clearly bring it out. So if there is another statement that is supposed to you're supposed to pick from the excerpt, let it be to like support, reinforce your illustration.
Okay, thank you, teacher Emmys. And with that, students at home, I hope you have learned a lot, looking at the four themes that we have discussed, and of course the minor themes that we have talked about. Now, if you have any question in the comment section, can you just leave us a question, a comment, and we shall answer in the next episode. Also ensure that you subscribe to our channel, because every other time with the team here, we have quality content that ensures that you guys are engaged and you get to learn and grow. Until next time, it's a thank you from us. Goodbye.